We see average Japanese salaryman who works all day and has no social life to speak of. He continues his monotonous and draining routine until one day he eventually has a heart attack from how unfulfilling his life truly is. He later opens his eyes to find himself in an old-looking hospital with a woman standing over him. She remarks that he has quite the gentle face for someone who is related to his father, but he is still unable to make sense of what is going on yet. The maid enters the room and offers the woman some tea, which is when he is finally able to get a look at himself in the reflection of the tray she's holding. He has been reincarnated as a baby named Ars Leuven, and by the time 3 years have passed, he has already begun to make the best of his new life here. He has mastered how to read and write the language here, and has also become fairly knowledgeable about this world as well. He was born in the Summerforth Empire, which rules over the Summerforth continent, and since has never seen a map like this before, he concludes that wherever he is now is definitely not Earth. He was fortunate enough to be born into a family of nobility called the Leuvens, and that comes with the perks of having a giant house, maids to look after him, and a personal chef. There is also one other thing he got when he reincarnated, as he discovered that he has an ability that no one else has ever had. He goes into the training room for the guards and asks if he can watch them while they practice. They all like Ars, so they see no reason not to let him watch, although it's a little strange that a 3-year-old is so interested in seeing them fight. As he walks around, he notices one guard who is struggling to use a spear, so he sees this as the perfect opportunity to use his special ability, Appraisal. With this ability, he is able to see all the stats of the guard named Milius, and although his cavalry stat is only at D, he has an archery stat which is at B, so Ars can tell that he would be much better suited to take up the role of an archer. After Milius loses his match, Ars goes up to him and asks if he has ever considered using a bow to fight his battles instead. Milius thinks bows are for cowards who enjoy being safe while they attack, so you'll never be caught using a weapon like that. But Ars insists that he thinks Milius would be a really good archer if he tried it out. He wouldn't normally agree to something like this, but since it's Ars that is asking, he caves and decides to try it out at least once. He's never shot a bow before, so he's not very confident with his chances of hitting the target, but Ars assures him that he'll be fine, so he stands in place and draws his bow to fire. The first shot is a bullseye, and Milius can hardly believe what he just managed to pull off. To make sure it wasn't a fluke, he fires several more shots at the target, and each land in the center, with one even managing to split another arrow. After seeing what Milius can do with a bow, all the other guards tell him he should switch to being an archer like Ars had said because he sucks at using a spear anyway. But they still have questions about how Ars was able to tell that Milius would be talented with a bow. There's not much he can say to explain his ability, so he just calls it instinct rather than explaining that he can see people's stats. He is confident in the accuracy of his ability after testing it out, but for some reason, he is unable to use it on himself. At dinner, Ars was getting ready to eat dinner when his father asked him if he had really discovered Milius' talent for archery. His father is Raven Leuvens, and he has a resting grumpy face, so he always looks a little angry even when he isn't. Ars thinks he is an amazing man since he was able to rise from the level of a farmer to nobility with his martial prowess alone. He is so powerful that he is able to take down 10 men all by himself if he needs to. He tells Ars to hone this instinct for finding other people's talent since he will one day take over as the lord of this land, and when he does, the ability to discern the talents of the people around him will be incredibly valuable. He gives his plate of food to Ars as a kind gesture, telling him that he wants Ars to grow up fast. Ever since that day, Ars has spent a lot of time reading up on the Empire, and that led him to realize that he is gonna be screwed if he doesn't change things soon. The rulers of Summerforth are corrupt, and because of this, the peasants are revolting all over the kingdom. If things go on like this, the Empire may fall, leading to widespread wars, and as the future lord of this place, he will be required to lead his men into battle, but he doesn't have the confidence to say that he could be successful in a war. He decides that he needs to prepare himself for such a disaster by gathering talented people to help him when that day comes. He heads out into the streets of the city and begins using appraisal to scan the people for anyone who has some kind of talent. However, even after searching for a long time and wearing out his eyes in the process, he still hasn't found anyone useful yet. Just then, he sees a kid being kicked out of a store and refused service by an old lady. Everyone sees this happen, but they are all racist as well, so they don't want to bother helping a Malkin. Malkin are people who came to Summerforth from across the sea, and they are usually brought in as slaves, so people think low of them. Ars isn't going to just watch him be ostracized by the people, so he walks up to him and offers a loaf of bread, which he had on hand. The boy is hesitant at first, But he accepts the bread, and Ars then uses appraisal on him, which leads him to discover that Reitz is stacked when it comes to stats. His stats are on par with some of the greatest people in the world, so if he has the opportunity to grow, he will become a force to be reckoned with. After finishing the bread, Reitz thanks Ars once more for his kindness and walks off, but Ars doesn't want to let such a talented person slip away from him, so he follows him until they both end up in a dark alley. Reitz stops him and says it's a bad idea to be following strangers down dark alleys, but Ars cuts him off and asks to make Reitz a retainer. Reitz thinks he's joking, but Ars is being dead serious, so he introduces himself as the son of the Lord and asks once again for Reitz to join him since he can tell that he is a very talented person. Reitz doesn't believe he could be as talented as Ars says he is. Plus, he knows it would cause trouble for his family's image if they took in a Malkin like him. Ars says he'll figure something out, but Reitz declines the offer anyway and begins walking off. As he is leaving, Ars begins chasing after him because he may never come across another person as gifted as Reitz again, so to convince him, he switches tactics and attempts to bribe him with all the delicious food his family's personal chef can make for him. Ars takes him back to his house, and Reitz is surprised to see that he wasn't joking when he said he was the son of the Lord of the land. They head inside, and delicious-looking food is served to Ars. But even the servants here are racist as well, so they only offer Reitz a bowl of beans and tells him that he can't possibly expect to eat decent food when he is a Malkin. They want him to eat his day-old beans and get out of the mansion, but Ars refuses to let such brazen disrespect be thrown at his guest. He makes it clear that Reitz is to be given the same treatment that any other guest would be given, so they all apologize and get him some good food this time. While Reitz is enjoying his meal, Ars asks what he is doing in Summerforth in the first place, so he explains that he was part of a group of mercenaries before, but unfortunately, they were all killed on one of their mission, and since he survived, he has been wandering around aimlessly until he happened to arrive here. That's a touching story, but the butler doesn't care in the slightest and urges Ars to make the filthy Malkin boy leave. Ars tells him that he won't be making Reitz leave anytime soon since he brought him here to have him become his official retainer. The butler thinks that is a preposterous proposal, and there is no way his father would ever give his permission for something like that. And he was right, since once Ars told his father of his plans, he flat out denied the idea on the ground that people like Reitz are simply inferior to the people of Summerforth, so he must be useless. Even his father is racist, so Ars is going to have to pull some strings to get him to accept Reitz as a retainer. He tells him that he can sense great talent in Reitz the same as he had done with Milius. However, while Raven trusts his son's ability to identify the talents of people, it is well known among the people of Summerforth that Malkins can never achieve anything good, so there is no way Reitz could have such incredible talent as he says. Ars remains insistent that having Reitz on their side will be indispensable to the future of their domain, so he suggests that Raven gives Reitz a test to confirm the talent he possesses. Raven agrees to test him, and if he passes, he can start out as a soldier. But the test he proposes is a duel which Reitz must win if he wants to be approved. Ars is worried since even though Reitz is indeed gifted, his father still has a higher prowess score than him, so he won't be able to win a fair fight. Fortunately, Raven is still a decent man, so he's not going to have a serious fight against a 14-year-old. He'll give Reitz a handicap to make things a little more fair to him, and under these conditions, Ars thinks Reitz has a good chance of coming out victorious. Reitz has no objections to this, so Raven says they should proceed with the duel immediately. While they are walking off so Reitz can fight Ars' father, Reitz stops for a moment and asks why Ars is working so just to take someone like him as a retainer. The offer makes him happy, but it honestly seems too good to be true considering he is persecuted wherever he goes because he is a Malkin. Ars assures him that he is only going through all this effort because Reitz is important to him. He will one day become the Lord of the Land, and when that day comes, he wants to have Reitz by his side, so Reitz promises to do his best to win. They arrive at the practice grounds, and everyone is confused about what's going on here. Raven asks for practice swords and an hourglass to be brought to them, and once the equipment is ready, he explains that all Reitz needs to do is land a single blow on him within the time limit to be declared the victor of the match. Ars thinks this might work out in his favor if those are the requirements, since even if Raven is the best swordsman in the land, Reitz's skill should be enough for him to at least land one blow on him. The duel begins so Raven charges at Reitz with full force, and although Reitz managed to dodge, he can tell that even with just a practice sword, if that strike has landed, it would be cleaning the pieces of his body from the floor. Raven is stronger than him, but Reitz is still able to hold his ground against him in the fight. The other soldiers are impressed that he is able to keep up with Raven at all since none of them have managed to do so, and that was when he was going easy on them. But right now, Raven is going after Reitz without holding back. At that moment, Reitz gets hit with a strike to the shoulder which sends him bouncing off the floor. He gets back up and looks over at Ars, who is rooting for him, so he regains his motivation to continue the fight and charges in with a new strategy. He ducks under Raven's first strike, and once behind him, he uses the glare of the sun as cover to block Raven's vision and land a strike. Raven still manages to block the strike, but once Reitz steps back to create distance, he announces that this duel is over. Reitz looks back to make sure he hadn't run out of time, but the hourglass still had some sand left in it, meaning Reitz has successfully landed a hit on Raven, even if it was just a light stroke. Everyone is shocked by the feat Reitz has just accomplished, and Raven congratulates him on his victory. He admits that Ars was right when he said that Reitz had an amazing talent, and after seeing it for himself, he is sure he may become a top-class swordsman in the future. Ars also has a bright future ahead of him if he was able to find such talent so easily. He had been worried about how Ars would handle the chaos in the world right now when the time came, but it looks like he has nothing to fear. Ars may even manage to become the new emperor of the land, but that's a little ambitious for the lord of such a small village. Reitz has also become quite popular among the soldiers, now that they have seen what he can do, and a little while later, Ars goes to see if Reitz has adjusted to his new life here. He is dressed in his new uniform as he has decided to take on servant duties as well, since he wishes to help out as much as possible. He also expresses his immense gratitude to Ars for saving him from a life on the streets, and to repay that debt, he will stand by his side from now on. After a few months of Reitz being a part of the household, and he has been adapting to it quite nicely. For the most part, he has been staying by Ars's side, rather than partaking in battles. And with all the tutoring he has had, he has become one of the most knowledgeable people in the whole house, so both the people of the town and the house have come to accept him as one of them. This is further emphasized when Ars hears a couple of maids talking about how handsome and hardworking Reitz is. Reitz soon approaches Ars because they have a scheduled lesson together, so Ars happily puts down his book and joins him as Reitz goes on to explain the history of the Summerforth Empire. It was once composed of 7 individual nations, but of those nations, Ansel took advantage of its strategic position to conduct trade operations with all the other kingdoms. Eventually, Ansel invaded and conquered the neighboring kingdom, having the entire continent under the control of Ansel's king, Anathus. The continent was later renamed the Summerforth Empire, and all this happened 200 years ago, but now the Summerforth Empire is in dire straits. The acting king, Badoras VIII, is only 8 years old, so all the power is actually held by his retainers, who are more concerned with gathering wealth and power for themselves than with the longevity of the empire. With the current power system, people have begun to lose faith in the empire, and revolts have been popping up left and right as a result. For these reasons, several provinces made the decision to ditch the whole loyalty to the crown thing and instead focus on keeping themselves afloat. Right now, they are just a minor problem, but Ars' father is already being dispatched to deal with them. So one day they may be a serious threat, and Ars needs to be prepared for that. He asks Reitz if he has any idea where Ground Zero would be if a major revolt were to happen. So he points to the Mission Province as a likely spot. Their ruler is currently old and in poor health, so once he's out of the picture, all hell is going to break loose. He has 2 sons who could take his place, and normally it would be the oldest, but the youngest is actually better suited for it than him. This will most certainly lead to a war, since both brothers want to inherit the position, and Ars wants to know who Raven would choose to follow if that ends up happening. From what Reitz knows, Raven believes it is the older brother's right to succeed their father. Ars is worried, since if his father ends up on the losing side of the conflict, then things could end up going really badly. Although while Ars is nervous, Reitz sees this as a good opportunity to rise up in the world for Raven. After all, a good showing in a major conflict will be a great addition to his accomplishments, so Reitz suggests they try to prepare for the occasion in order to make the outcome more certain. To do that, they are going to need to find more talented people, so Ars and Reitz prepare to head into town. As they leave, they spot Raven, who has been training far more frequently in preparation for the looming war. Once he notices his son, Raven asks if he plans to head into town today, and Ars confirms it, adding that he wants to look for some more exceptionally talented people. Since Ars' track record speaks for itself, Raven trusts that he will find someone amazing, but he asks that Ars try his best to find someone who has a talent for magic, because it would be of great assistance in battles to come. Raven is unable to use magic on his own, and his retainers who can use it aren't particularly gifted in the art, yet magic could easily turn the tide of a battle. so finding a gifted magic user is important. Ars and Reitz head out to the capital of Canary to find a magic user, but Ars is shocked to see so many people filling the city streets. According to the information Reitz had gathered, the city has a population of about 50,000, which is way more than Ars had imagined it would be. This place is ruled by the House of Pyres, and the people here look very wealthy, which I'm sure wasn't achieved by any nefarious means, so Ars wishes to someday provide this kind of life for his people back in Lamberg. There are a lot of people to choose from, so Reitz is sure they'll find someone adequate for the job in no time at all. However, even as Ars scans through every single individual in the town square, he doesn't find a single person that would be a promising mage. For now, since they haven't had much luck finding any gifted people, Reitz suggests that they both go grab some lunch while they take a break. Ars is happy with that idea, but as they are heading to a market, they walk past an alleyway where Ars learns that things are never as pleasant as they seem at first glance. Reitz explains that no matter what, wherever there is wealth and prosperity, there will also be the poor and decrepit. But even though he was the exact same way a few months ago, he has to let Ars know that there's nothing he can realistically do to change all their situations now. He had looked at the flashy town earlier and thought it was wonderful, but with a sight like this, his opinion has changed. What he wants to create is a town where even the less fortunate are able to make a living for themselves. And though he knows he is just being wishful, he would like to find a talented mage among one of the poor people here, so he can at least save one person. While he says this, there is a cloaked girl listening in on their conversation, but she soon slinks away from the two. Ars and Reitz make it to the market, and Ars is drooling over all the amazing food available here when he gets called out by a fishy stall owner. He offers Ars the chance to buy a dragon egg from the northern region and have his very own pet dragon, which he is very excited to hear since he didn't even know dragons existed in this world till just now. He really wants a pet dragon, so he reaches into his bag and says he'll buy 3. But then Reitz pulls out a knife and holds the stall owner of the blade's edge. He is insanely angry that someone would dare try to scam Ars in front of him, and although the scammer tries to deny any wrongdoing, Reitz knows better. Trade with the northern region was frozen last year, so the only way he could actually get dragon eggs was if he illegally smuggled them in. But even at that, these are just regular old lizard eggs from the Ansel region. Reitz won't take such blatant disrespect to his master, so he is prepared to kill this man right now. However, Ars doesn't want to get into any trouble for murdering a local, so he tells Reitz to just let it go since it was his own fault for nearly falling for it. Reitz realizes that he's making a scene, so he calms down and apologizes to Ars for being so hot-headed. After finally getting some food to eat, Ars notices a candy stall across the street, so he runs over to go get some for himself. But as he pulls out his money pouch, a girl bumps into him, and his pouch gets poached. He doesn't notice what happened at first, but as Reitz comes running up, Ars is informed that he just got robbed, so he starts panicking. Reitz assures him that they will be able to get it back as he picks Ars up to chase after the girl. But even with his speed, the girl is still so fast that Reitz only manages to pull off her cloak. They follow her into an alleyway, but it looks like they aren't the only ones who are after her, as she has been cornered by a group of 3 guys who really don't like her. The girl gets punched to the floor, and even though she just stole from him, Ars can't bear to see someone get treated so badly. The man doesn't like being told what to do by a kid, so he's about to give Ars the same punch. But Reitz obliviously isn't going to let him get away with it. He warns the man to not continue with his attack, but the man doesn't surrender, so he gets a 1 piece to the gut before being thrown like a bag of dirt. His 2 friends try to jump in and avenge their buddy, but they both get manhandled by Reitz as well, eventually deciding to just take the L and leave. Now that they are gone, Ars asks if the girl is alright, but then he gets a good look at her, and she's fucking amazing. She has S-rank potential as a mage, which is exactly what Ars was looking for. So while Reitz walks up to her to demand Ars' money pouch back, Ars asks her if she would like to become one of his retainers. This shocks both the girl and Reitz, since they can't believe he would hire someone who just stole from him. But Ars is serious about it since he can see her immense aptitude for magic. The girl answers coldly, saying she would rather die than serve a child like Ars, and when asked why she gave such a strong refusal, she says that there are just some things she can't stand. And Ars is one of them. Besides, she says she has never used magic before, so there's no way she could be as adept as Ars is claiming. Ars tries to convince her by saying he can tell that she would be great at magic. She looks broke and smelly, so the offer of a job and a home should be really appealing to her. However, she gets offended and thinks Ars is looking down on her since he has been living the easy life since the day he was born. She has no interest in becoming the pawn of some noble who is only interested in protecting their lifestyle, but Ars says he is not like that. He wants to create a world where people like her can have stable lifestyles and earn a decent income without having to steal. His ideals are great and all, but promises are cheap, and the people here don't have the luxury of waiting for this someday to come because they are worried about what they'll eat today. So her answer is still no. Reitz can't make her change her mind, but he hasn't forgotten about the money pouch she stole, so he demands that she return it once more, which she does without putting up a fight. Ars still hasn't given up, so he tries to keep the conversation going by asking who those guys that were after her are. She explains that a while ago she got caught stealing from a noble, so she ended up getting sold to a slave trader as punishment. She managed to escape, but the slave trader sent those guys after her because she would be sold for a high price on the market. If that's the case, then Ars asks why she is still in this town, all since it would be much smarter to ditch this place and get as far away as possible so the slave trader doesn't catch her. She responds that she can't just leave this place because she's got people here who she cares for. At that same moment, a bunch of kids come running to her. They have been worried sick for the past 2 days since they didn't know what happened to her. These kids are all orphans with no one to turn to, so the girl took it upon herself to take care of them, and that means she can't leave them behind. Ars understands the situation now, so he won't try to recruit the girl anymore, but he still wants to help their situation, so he offers her his money to keep them going for a while. She still thinks he is just trying to act like a good person. But since he did offer, she's not going to turn down free money. She takes the money and leaves with the kids, but Ars is left with a lot to think about after what he has seen. Later on, Ars sits outside his hotel room late into the night and thinks about the whole thing until Reitz comes to tell him to get inside before he catches a cold. He sees that Ars is still upset about his encounter with the girl, but he can understand how she felt at the time. Most nobles aren't exactly great people, so it is never a good idea to blindly trust what one says at first, but he assures Ars that he isn't one of the bad nobles since he actually wants to help people. Still, Ars gets the feeling the girl may have been right about him taking his privileged lifestyle for granted with him, making such a grandiose claim of bringing a better quality of life to the poor people. He honestly hadn't thought it through much, so he needs to do some reflecting on himself. Just then, Ars' self-reflection is interrupted as he sees those kids from before running down the street, and they are in a panic because Charlotte, the girl from before, has been caught by the slave traders. Charlotte has just been dragged back to the slave trader's office by his lackeys, and the goons who were forced to chase after her take their frustrations out by giving her an extra beating for making them work so hard. Even while she's getting kicked over and over, Charlotte doesn't cry or fight back because she has more or less accepted her fate. The slave trader tells the goons to lay off beating her because he's got a buyer willing to pay big bucks for her, and the dude's a real pervert, so he wants Charlotte's face in good condition. Since the boss ordered it, they agree to leave her alone, but then they notice the sack of money she has with her and pick it up as a bonus for themselves. However, while she doesn't care about herself, that money is where she draws the line. She gets up and tries to run away after grabbing the bag, but she is immediately slammed back to the ground. The slave trader tries to convince her to give up on running away since even if she did manage to escape, she would just end up going back to the life of misery on the streets, so she should just accept that she has lost and become some random guy's slave. Just when all hope seemed lost, a loud crash is heard as Reitz bursts through the front door with his gloves ready to pound some faces in. The goons recognize him as the same guy from earlier, but they seem to have forgotten how badly they were beaten. So Reitz gives them a quick reminder by knocking them out again. The slave trader tells the last guy not to attack because he can't win, so instead, he starts questioning why Ars would suddenly bust down the doors to another man's house for no reason. Ars gets up and addresses Albert, the slave trader, telling him that he wants Charlotte to be released at once. By this point, Albert has realized that Ars is probably a noble, so he calms down a bit since nobles are the primary buyers for his slaves, but Ars is a little different from the normal selfish noble. Charlotte tries to stop Ars and tells him to stay out of this since he has no reason to put himself in danger for her sake, but he doesn't need a reason to do the right thing. Since he met her, he had been wondering why she always had that blank look on her face, and now he knows why. It's because her ambition stat is stuck at a 1. Albert has no idea what Ars is talking about, so Ars explains that ambition is what drives a person to keep improving themselves and aim for greater heights, but with hers being stuck at only 1, she's totally given up on all aspirations for the future. Albert laughs, saying it's obvious she would give up on her future since she's only a slave now, but Ars doesn't see what's so funny about it and gets angry over it. As Charlotte watches Ars get angry for her sake, she is set into a flashback of the moment when she first lost hope for her life. It was the moment she realized that no matter how hard she tried, she would never amount to anything even close to what she saw other people have, so from then on, she decided to focus on surviving first and nothing else so she doesn't have to face the injustice of the world. Albert has had enough of entertaining Ars's self-righteous speech, so even if he is the son of a noble, he's a noble. He is going to have to make him disappear. Charlotte sees what's about to go down, so she pleads with Ars to get out of here before something bad happens to him because of her, but Ars assures her that he isn't the one in danger here. He calls over to Ritz and tells him it is okay to lose his temper for now, and murder is on the table. So as one of the goons approaches him, he palms the guy's neck and has the guy's feet dangling in the air before he slams him into the ground. Even after what they just witnessed, the rest of the goons still think they can handle him in a fight, so they try to surround Ritz to take him down, but none of them are able to last more than 5 seconds. By the time he is done with pummeling, there are 3 dead and several injured scattered across the room, so Albert is left with no other choice but to call in his big guns. He yells for someone to get down here, and this huge guy starts coming down the stairs while complaining that they are interrupting his booze time. Charlotte is getting nervous because the guy is absolutely huge, and Albert's confidence is restored because his secret weapon is here to save him. This guy was an infantry captain in the army, although they kicked him out for bad behavior. Now all he cares about is his booze, which Albert is happy to supply as long as he does his job and kills the intruders. Just to be safe, Ars uses his ability to check if this guy is actually a threat, and after analyzing him, he assures Charlotte that there is nothing to worry about since Ritz can definitely handle this guy. The big guy is so confident in his capabilities since he is only up against a little kid, but Ritz is no ordinary kid, as the guy will soon find out. He takes his swing, but he connects with nothing but air as Ritz leaped into the air to dodge. And while hanging from the chandelier, he jumps down while stomping down on the big guy's neck. After the guy gets back up, Ritz gives him a nasty uppercut to take him out of the picture entirely, and Charlotte is left wondering who Ars and Ritz really are. Albert is visibly shaken by the turn of events, but he still insists that Ars and Ritz have no right to do this to him since the foreman of the Canary district made slave trading legal. Ars is aware of that, which is why he came here with the intention of paying for Charlotte's freedom. And while Albert is probably thinking that information would have been useful before they started fighting, he can't just sell Charlotte to Ars because he already has a buyer for her. Ritz steps up and tells Albert that he's only got 2 choices here. The easy way or the hard way, but either way, Ritz is still fully capable of just taking Charlotte and leaving since they can't stop him. So it would be in his best interest to accept the money and spin a story that someone came and offered a better price. Alternatively, he could refuse and have his reputation ruined because he openly got robbed of a slave, but the choice is up to him. Given the options he has, Albert is forced to concede and agrees to let them take Charlotte, so Ars and Ritz both turn back to Charlotte, and since everything is finally settled, Ars stretches out his hand to Charlotte, saying they should probably get back to her friends since they are worried sick about her. Charlotte doesn't say a word to him, but her opinion of Ars has changed a lot in the past few minutes. As they are leaving, Charlotte stops for a moment and says there is a place she wants to visit before they return. She leads them deep into the forest to show them something, but Ars' stubby child feet aren't made for hiking, so he's exhausted long before they actually make it there. After a few more minutes of walking, Charlotte says they've arrived, so Ars looks up and is pleasantly surprised by the amazing view he gets to see. This has always been her secret spot since when she sees the whole town from up here, her problems always seem small in comparison. If the spot is so special to her, Ars asks why she would choose to share it with him. She brings up what Ars had said earlier about wanting to create a town where people like her can live stable lives, but she wants to know why he cares so much in the first place. Ars answers that it is because he likes children, which doesn't make a lot of sense to her since he's still basically a toddler compared to her, but hear him out for a second. He's had a whole life in Japan before he reincarnated here, and something that always managed to lift his spirits when he was tired was the smile of a child, and that's because a child's smile is so full of hope and just plain cute. So he wants to protect those smiles no matter what. Charlotte is satisfied with that answer, so she agrees to go with Ars after all. Ars is happy, but he thought she had a commitment to those kids, so she couldn't leave. That may be true, but the reason she is leaving is because she wants to help Ars make a place where they can have hope for the future. Since she'll be joining them, Ritz asks to see her demonstrate her talent for magic using this magic tool. Ars asks where he got that, and he just so happened to find it on the floor of a house they just visited, although it was attached to an unconscious body. It's not that he doubts that she has talent since Ars recommended her after all, but he wants to see it for himself so he can respect her as a comrade. She agrees to try, but she makes no promises since this is literally the first time she's ever tried magic. Reese shows her how to cast a basic spell, and Ars waits in anticipation since he doesn't know how much power a person with S-rank mage potential would have. As Reese finishes showing her how to cast the spell, she points her hand to the sky and recites the incantation, causing flames to gather around her hand, and eventually a massive blast is fired off, creating a huge explosion in the sky. Both Ars and Reitz are left in stunned silence over what they've just witnessed, and the people of the region are left wondering if they are being bombed or something. Charlotte takes a moment to accept that she actually just did that, and after that, she turns to Ars and Reitz, who still have their mouths open in shock. Ars already knew she was amazing at magic, but seeing it with his own eyes is still an amazing sight. Before they go, however, Charlotte has one more request to ask. She wants to confirm that being his retainer means she will get a place to stay and food to eat, which Ars assures her of. She will also be getting a monthly salary, although it won't be that much. Since that's the arrangement, Charlotte asks if Ars could send her salary to the kid she was looking after since they'll have a hard time getting by without her around. All she really needs is a place to stay and some food to eat anyway. Ars agrees to do that for her and says he can't wait to see what her future holds. She gets down on one knee and pledges to do everything in her power to make Ars' dream come true, but Ars tells her to quit being so formal because he finds it awkward. He tells her she can just talk to him like normal, and she agrees to do just that because she doesn't like speaking formally either. Now that he has accomplished what he came here to do, Ars thinks it is about time they return home, especially since they have already spent all the money they have on hand anyway. They head back into town where Charlotte says goodbye to the kids in town, and right before leaving to return to house, they take a little snack break. Charlotte never really learned table manners or any manners for that matter, so Reitz is going to have to drill them into her brain so she doesn't end up disgracing Ars in the future, but she doesn't like the idea of having to learn boring stuff like that. After the long journey, they later arrive back at House Leuven, and Ars introduces his father to Charlotte, but his initial reaction upon seeing the new mage is refusal, since he believes the battlefield is too dangerous for a girl like her. However, once he sees her create a dragon-level explosion with a basic fire spell, he immediately changes his attitude and welcomes her to House Leuven. A few years after Charlotte joined, Raven returns after yet another battle, and Ars is there to greet him as soon as he arrives. He's glad to see that everyone made it back safely, so he asks his father how the battle went this time around. Raven is happy to say that it was an overwhelming victory, and largely because of Charlotte, who has grown in several ways over the past few years. Ever since she was inducted into the mage unit, she has been the star of the show and quickly became one of the most feared mages in the country. Because of her, their mage unit is now regarded as the pride of the Hovet, right alongside the infantry unit. Ars knew Charlotte was talented from the moment he saw her, but he never would have guessed that she would make such a difference by herself, so he is even more motivated to find more exceptionally skilled people. In other news, Ars now has a baby brother and sister, and Ars can already see that they will be valuable members of the family from their stats. Just then, Reitz comes into the room and says he has excellent news for Ars since there might be some new talent in town. A family of hunters has just moved in, and two of the boys are really strong and tall, so the townspeople are singing their praises. They won't know for sure if they are the kind of talent Ars is looking for until he sees them with his own eyes, so he and Reitz soon prepare to go and meet this family. Reitz has been told that they live out in the forest near the town, so they'll need to go back horseback. But before they depart, their attention is drawn to Charlotte, who is having lunch in the tree above them. She asks where they are headed, so Ars explains that they are going to scout out some new prospects for talent. If that's what they are doing, Charlotte says she'll accompany Ars as an escort since she has the day off, and Ars is happy to have her come. But he didn't expect the ride to be so awkward since it's cramped with three of them on the same horse. Charlotte complains about the horse being slow, but Reitz tells her that it's her fault for insisting on coming along and weighing them down. Just then, a wild animal runs past, and an arrow flies through the trees, impaling and killing the animal. Shortly after, two brothers emerge from the brush and are happy to see that they caught their prey. But in the middle of their banter, they notice that there are other people in the area, so they apologize for firing so carelessly and putting them in possible danger. Ars gets a good look at them and realizes that these are the two hunter boys they were looking for, and they are pretty impressive since Gatos has A-rank infantry skills, and Marcus has A-rank archery skills. The boys find it a bit strange for people to be out in this part of the woods, so they ask what Ars and the others came here to do, which is when Ars tells them that he has a proposal he wants to offer. The boys invited Ars to their home where their father has prepared a delicious feast for them, but he apologizes for not being able to do more for such important guests. Ars says he has nothing to be sorry about since he dropped in unannounced, and Charlotte thinks the meal they prepared is really delicious anyway. The boy's father then asks what business Ars has with them all the way out in the forest, so Ars tells them that he is here to recruit Gatos and Marcus as soldiers to join the Luvan army. This is great news for the two boys since they always wanted to make a name for themselves as soldiers, and their father is grateful for the opportunity, but he wishes his other son, Rosal, could have talent like Marcus and Gatos. Ars didn't know the man had another son, so he asks where he is now, so Charlotte points out the redhead boy that just slipped past them to take a loaf of bread. The father scolds Rosal for trying to sneak away without saying hello to the son of the Lord of the Land, so Rosal does his best to give a greeting, but while he is doing that, Ars takes a look at him, and he sees that Rosal's intelligence has a max of 109. That's probably the highest in all of Luvan, and though it may be only at 45 right now, is a 5-year-old, so it's to be expected. With proper training, Ars believes Rosal would be an excellent retainer, so he asks him to become one. Ars believes his offer is a great deal, but Rosal wants nothing to do with wars, so he sees Ars and the others as cruel tyrants who are trying to force him to die on the battlefield. So he says a firm hell no and shuts himself back in his room. Ars can't believe he got rejected, so the father explains that Rosal is pretty timid and frail compared to his brothers. His mother died 2 years ago, so he has been withdrawn ever since then. Normally at his age, as the son of a hunter, he should be out chopping firewood or learning how to hunt, but as he is now, he would barely be able to survive on his own, much less go to war. Ars explains that he doesn't want Rosal to become a soldier because that's not what he is suited for. The talent he possesses is one that would make him an excellent strategist, and now that he thinks about it, the father had noticed that Rosal has always been rather clever. Ars wants to ask him one more time to become a retainer, so he enters Rosal's room, but he only ends up scaring him even more than before. Ars apologizes for startling him, but then he notices that Rosal was reading a book, so he asks if he enjoys reading. Rosal confirms his love for reading, although this is the only book they have and his mother used to read it to him before she passed away. Ars feels bad for Rosal, so he asks him if he would like to come to the library in his house and take some books. Rosal is excited to hear this at first, but he doesn't trust Ars' intentions and thinks he is going to try and force him into the army as payment for the books he uses, but Ars denies such underhanded motives and says he just wants to help Rosal explore his love for reading. If that's really all he wants, then Rosal agrees to go, but only if his brothers can come along for his safety. Once they get to Ars' house, Rosal immediately begins screaming his lungs out when a dog starts licking him, so his brothers tell him to calm down since it's not going to hurt him. They are amazed by how large Ars' house is, so Ars offers to have Charlotte show him around the place since she is the head of the mage unit, but she really doesn't want to. That is until they both express how awesome they think she is, so she takes a liking to them immediately. While Charlotte is showing them around, Ars takes Rosal to the library, and Rosal is amazed beyond measure because he has never seen so many books in one place before. He is free to read as much as he likes here, but Ars says he has to get going since he has his daily lessons to complete, so Reitz will be here for him in case he needs anything. A few hours later, Ars had fallen asleep at his desk, and once he wakes up, he frantically ran downstairs to speak with Rosal before he leaves. He makes his way to the library and asks Reitz if Rosal is still here, but Rosal is passed out on the floor since he exhausted himself trying to read as much as possible. Reitz is impressed with what Rosal is capable of since he read and understand concepts he had never heard of almost immediately. So Ars takes a look at Rosal's stats and he can see that his intelligence is already shooting up. Just then, Charlotte and the two brothers arrive to pick Rosal up, but they see him passed out in a pile of books. They are glad to see he is doing what he loves, but they can't understand what Rosal finds so interesting about books since he never learned to read. Ars is shocked to find out that Rosal never learned to read, so when he gets back up, he asks how he learned to read. Rosal explains that when he was little, he could remember his mother reading to him, so he just matched the words she said to the words on the page, and eventually he was able to read on his own. His brothers have a hard time believing that since he was only 3 years old when their mother used to read to him, but Rosal just says he is able to remember everything since the day he was born, so everyone is even more shocked. After hearing just how amazing Rosal is, Ars is willing to do anything to win Rosal over. Later, Ars is thinking of a way to show Rosal and his family that there are ways to hunt without needing to be physically gifted, as that may give Rosal the confidence to become his retainer. He tells them that traps are a common method for hunting in other countries, but Marcus and Gatos don't think it will be effective against the animals here since they are pretty smart and quick. However, Ars has faith that Rosal's brain can come up with something that will be effective, and then his father will surely have to acknowledge him as a capable hunter. Rosal doesn't think he'll be able to do something like that. but his brothers are here to support him and say they will do anything to help him. Rosal wants to prove that he can be useful, so he agrees to give it his best shot, and after a lot of off-screen work, a trap has been constructed. Rosal's father comes out a while later and he is shocked by what he sees before him. The boys see him and excitedly show off what Rosal was able to come up with as they tell their father how to look inside the trap. The father obliges and he is shocked to see that it is full of animals. The brothers proudly state that it was all Rosal's idea, so they push him to tell their father how he came up with it. Russell timidly says that he learned that these animals mindlessly charge at anything that is the color yellow, so he used a painted wall to get them to run into the trap. It's safe to use it since no human would ever fall for it, probably, and he also came up with a way to keep baby animals away by hanging herbs, which they are known to avoid. Rosal's father just stands there dumbfounded because he has just realized two things. Rosal is a genius, and he just made the family business of hunting obsolete with this trap, and it only took him one day to come up with it. After processing his thoughts, he asks the older brothers if they are leaving tomorrow to join the Luvid army, and once they confirm it, he tells them to take Rosal with them. Rosal doesn't know where his father's sudden change in attitude came from, but his father is adamant that Rosal needs to leave home, and he has nothing else to say besides that, so he walks away. Rosal now believes his father must hate him for making hunting redundant, so he accepts that he's just going to have to go with Ars since he has nowhere else to go. But Ars tells him that he can't leave yet, at least until he has cleared up this misunderstanding with his father. Rosal's mother fell ill shortly after he was born, so he has always believed that his father hated him for being the reason their mother died. Even though they never said that, he believes that's what they all think about him, which is why he always locks himself in his room. Right now he is wishing he had never been born, but then he hears some movement on the roof, and it happens to be his father and brothers. Marcus and Gatos both came to thank their father for raising them well, but they ask him why he had to talk to Rosal that way earlier. The trap he built was amazing, and Rosal made it so that the father wouldn't have to work so hard, so there was no need to be so harsh on him like that. The father knows he shouldn't have talked to Rosal like he did, but he feels as though he has failed him as a father by not recognizing his talents. He would only focus on what Rosal couldn't do, but Rosal is really kind, so even though he was never acknowledged, he is still concerned about helping a failure of a father like him rather than pursuing his calling. So the only way he could think of to get Rosal to leave was to make him resent him as a father. The next day, Ars arrives to escort the brothers back to the manor, and Rosal seems really determined to go with him. So his father believes that he must hate him after all and doesn't bother trying to say goodbye so Rosal can go live a better life without regrets. However, Rosal turns back to him and says he could never hate him no matter what. Rosal admits that he has been useless to the family until now, so the reason he is going with Ars is so that he can learn all kinds of things so he can be useful. And once he has done that, he wants to come back and live with his father. His father is brought to tears after hearing that Rosal still loves him, so they take a moment to say their heartfelt goodbyes to one another. Marcus and Gatos thank Ars for convincing Rosal to stay and giving him the chance to reconcile with his father before becoming his retainer, but Ars never really cared if Rosal joined him or not. He just wanted to see him happy, because at the end of the day, he may be amazing talent, but he is also one of Ars' people. Sometime later, Raven falls ill, and Ars is sitting with him at his bedside and pleading with him not to go on the next mission in his current state. Unfortunately, Raven is obligated to go because, with the current state of things in the world, there is simply no other choice. The governor of Mission had passed away recently, and in his will, he named his younger son as the one to inherit the throne. However, as expected, the older brother could not accept his father's will. He claimed that the documents were forged and thus began a civil war with his brother. Although the majority of people had thought of the older brother as an incompetent fool, he had managed to make a name for himself through several battle victories, so in turn he managed to garner the support of a decent amount of retainers in his quest for power. And due to the ensuing civil war, the neighboring country of Seats decided to take advantage and invade while the country of Mission is divided among themselves. This will mean another battle needs to be fought, but Raven tells Ars to stop worrying about it because he has got more pressing matters to attend to, like the fact that his wife will be arriving here shortly. Ars is understandably shocked because this is the first time he's hearing anything about him getting married, but I guess Raven just forgot to mention it. He pulls out a letter he received earlier from the girl in question, and upon receiving it, Ars immediately runs to his retainers to tell them the bad news. Upon hearing that Ars has a betrothed, they are all equally as shocked as him. This is the first he has heard anything about her, and a maid comes in to tell him that his soon-to-be wife is outside already, so he has literally no time to prepare. He heads outside to meet her as the carriage pulls up, but he's nervous as hell since even in his past life, he never had a girlfriend. And now he's just meant to hand him a wife out of nowhere. But after seeing her for the first time, he realizes that he may have hit the jackpot on this one. But then he gets a look at her stats, and her diplomacy and ambition are through the roof, so she is naturally inclined to be conniving. He is immediately put on guard because she may just be putting on a nice act to make a good impression on him, and for all he knows, she may be here to dispose of him since his father is currently ill. He mustn't let himself fall for her charms, but that's not going to be an easy task since she is really pulling at his heartstrings. After snapping out of it, he offers to show her around the estate. But as they walk in, Lucia's butler sees Reitz for the first time and he still has a few racist tendencies, so he is shocked that they have someone like him here. However, Licia will not stand for such rude comments and certainly not directed to someone her future husband trusts with his life. She tells Jan to apologize for his statements immediately, which he does, and R's opinion of Licia improves a little. As she is shown around the estate and meets all the people who work here, she has nothing but good things to say about everyone here. And while she and Ars are sharing a meal together, she talks about how delicious the meat and the food is, which gets Ars to start explaining the whole story behind how they came up with a new trap system. But in his excitement, he failed to notice that he had a little sauce on his cheek, so he gets embarrassed when she points it out. Ars must admit to himself that Licia is a master at communication if she's able to keep a conversation going with him, and in addition, she's quick-witted and more beautiful than anyone he has ever seen before. If he hadn't seen her stats, he would have been head over heels for her by now. But that aside, Licia continues the conversation by mentioning that she got to see a little bit of Lambert while she was on her way here, and she is truly delighted by how lively it is. Ars agrees with her and says he would have personally shown her around town had the weather been more favorable, but Licia tells him that she doesn't think that's going to be a problem since the rain isn't going to last long. A few moments later, the rain clears up just as she had said it would, and Ars is utterly amazed, so he asks if she has the ability to control the weather or something. She tells him that it's nothing as special as weather powers, but rather, she just watched the clouds on her way here. And she was able to tell that the rain wouldn't last long from how the clouds moved. And since the sky is clear again, Ars will be able to show her around town after all. Meanwhile, outside the door, Rosal and Charlotte are spying on Ars's lunch date, and Charlotte asks Rosal what he thinks about Licia, and from what he can tell, she is the very definition of an ideal wife. But you would be lying if you said she didn't seem a little scary. Charlotte was thinking the exact same thing, but that's mainly because she is jealous of her. Ars and Licia head out into town, and he introduces her to the people as his future wife, so they are all excited and plan to throw a celebration for him. However, close by, there is an argument going on between two men, so Ars and Licia rush over to see what's going on. The reason for the disagreement is that a furniture maker says he placed an order for Fire Maggie stones, but the seller brought Sound Maggie stones, and they are now arguing over whose fault this is. Since he is going to be the future lord of the land, Ars thinks he should try to do something about this dispute, but he can't afford to fail since one slip up here would show weakness, and he can't let Licia see any signs of weakness from him until he has made sure of her intentions. Just then, Charlotte and Rosal show up, and Charlotte asks if Ars would like her to settle it, since one hit from her magic should be enough to put an end to their quarrels as well as their lives. Licia is against the idea, so she states her disapproval, but then she mentions how much of a fan she is of Charlotte since she is widely renowned as the most famous in the land. All that praise was enough to get Charlotte to like Licia in no time, so Licia then moves on to the next issue and asks Ars if he would be willing to let her settle the dispute. And if she manages to succeed in her attempt, she would like him to do her a favor. She then approaches the two men and gets their attention, so they'll stop fighting, at which point she introduces herself as Licia Plaid. Licia goes on to tell them that she may have a solution to their predicament, so she offers to buy the Sound Maggie stones that they have, since they are rather rare in her region. And conversely, she also has a large number of Flame Maggie stones in stock, so she can arrange for some to be sold to them at a reasonable rate. And after providing such a convenient solution, she tells them that this whole thing was Ars' idea, thereby giving him all the credit. The people begin thanking him for being such a huge help to them, but Ars has a request to make of them so that incidents like these don't happen in the future. He wants every business transaction to have a contract made so that the terms are as clear as possible. They agree to do that from now on, and Ars thanks Licia for the help in settling the dispute since things worked out perfectly, and now he's even more convinced of how amazing her diplomacy skills are. A while later, they are still walking through town, so Ars apologizes to her for making her move around so much, but she says it's fine since she managed to learn a lot from the tour. But now that they are alone, she asks if she can tell him what that favor she was talking about earlier was. Ars had already anticipated this, so he braces himself for any unreasonable demands she may make, but the only thing she wants from him is an honest answer. She asks him what kind of person he likes, and Ars is thrown for a loop since he can't figure out what Licia's intentions are. Eventually, he just gives up on trying to outthink her since he knows she is too smart for that. So instead, he decides to answer the question straightforwardly, So he tells her that he likes people who are honest and don't try to hide things from him. So Lisha smiles and says she will keep that in mind before continuing to walk, leaving Ars even more confused than before. The rest of the day went on without much, but in the end, Ars was unable to figure out what Lisha's real intentions are. But since she'll be staying the night here, he decides to just try again tomorrow and gets ready to climb into bed. However, as he lifts the covers, he finds Lisha hiding on his bed, and it's the biggest shock he has received all day. He questions if Lisha is aware that this is meant to be his room, and she is fully aware of it. But she just thought it would be funny to sneak into his room and catch him off guard. Jokes aside, she does have a reason for coming here, as she brings up what Ars had said earlier about liking girls who don't hide things from him. So she is here to have an honest conversation with him. Ars pours Lisha a cup of tea before asking her what exactly it is that she wants to talk about with him. Lisha doesn't hesitate and immediately asks Ars to tell her what he thinks about her, a statement which makes Ars spit up his own tea. He asks what she means by that, so Lisha explains that she has a special talent to be able to tell what someone feels just by looking at them, and when she first met Ars, the emotion he displayed was that of suspicion. Of course, being suspicious of someone you just met is normal, which is why Lisha prides herself on being able to gain people's trust after just a few conversations. However, everything she tried to gain Ars' favor only managed to make him even more suspicious of her, so she wants to know what it is that he finds suspicious about her. Ars can understand why she would be uneasy about his suspicion of her, since she obviously would never have guessed that someone would be able to see her stats, and he could probably dodge the question if he wanted to, but Ars chooses to be honest with her instead. He tells her that he has the ability to see people's attributes and aptitudes, so when he first saw her, he could tell that she has incredibly high diplomacy stats, as well as a higher level of ambition than most people. This led him to believe that everything she would do would be a calculated step, so he kept his guard up in case she had any ulterior motives. He's not sure if Lisha will believe him, but she says she believes him since what he said actually perfectly explains his behavior. And it is true that she has great ambitions, so Ars asks what those ambitions may be, which gets Lisha a little flustered, but she ultimately admits that her dream is to find an amazing man to fall in love with her. But that's so anticlimactic that Ars is left speechless, and the awkward silence is unbearable for Lisha. Ars is slowly falling victim to her charms now that he knows she's not a threat, but if he really thinks about it, with the current era, her best shot at a successful life hinges on getting married to the most powerful and capable man, but by comparison to others, House Leuven isn't especially large or powerful, so getting betrothed to someone like Ars must be less than ideal for her. Lisha can tell exactly what Ars is thinking, and while it may be true that House Leuven's territory is quite small, she is more interested in Ars as a person, which is why her initial plan was to see if Ars was an idiot or not. However, after getting to spend the day with him, she is convinced that Ars is the man she wishes to marry. The territory may still be small, but that's just for now, since she is sure that in the future, Ars will be able to do amazing things and become a great man. Lisha decides to call it a night, so she gets up to return to her room, and after she leaves, Ars begins kicking himself over fumbling his first ever confession like that, but he is happy that Lisha shared her honest feelings with him. Meanwhile, outside his door, Lisha is regretting the decision to share her feelings because she is utterly embarrassed about the whole thing. However, she is at least glad that she was able to honestly speak with Ars, and she doesn't get to do things like that often. The next day, as Lisha is on the carriage ride to return home, she thinks about how much she has always hated the world of nobility. People constantly lie and never say what they really think, and she was always able to tell when people were being dishonest, so it made her sick to her stomach. But then one day, she heard some noble ladies gossiping about how the girl they used to bully married her way into a position of power above even them. And that was when Lisha realized that the only way to escape the constant lies was to become so powerful that people can't afford to betray you. To do that, she learned to lie her way into the good graces of people, since she had already seen how it's done. Initially, she had no intention of going through with the marriage due to the minor scale of the Leuven territory, but she still wanted to maintain favorable relations, which is why she was laying the charm on him. However, that just made Ars suspicious of her. One thing she managed to learn about him while they were out together, though, is that Ars is truly kind, as emphasized by how well-liked he is among the people. She wants to be a part of the world Ars will build, which is why she chose to stay by his side. She is also sure that his kindness will cause him some trouble with people who want to take advantage of it, so she'll make sure she's there to end them if anyone tries to hurt her darling Ars. After Lisha left, she and Ars began exchanging letters, although Ars is still a bit nervous writing to her. Recently, things have been quite peaceful, with the mission's civil war having died down a bit, and Raven seems to be recovering from his illness as well, so Ars wishes these peaceful times could last forever. This was the end of episode 5. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.